Good evening, Aberdeen fans. It's Red Tinted Glasses Live. I never thought we would do a podcast like this. Yes, I built the hope up through the week, but we are here and we are Scottish Cup champions, Phil. How does that feel?
I mean, there's only one way to keep it going, and it's 3 days in a row, Glenn. Cheers.
Cheers, Phil.
Oh, what a day. What an absolute, not even just a day, what a weekend. I mean, I'm still absolutely buzzing. Like I say, I've never sat with a beamer in so many meetings during work in all my days. Weird what a cup win does to you.
Oh, I don't think it's sunk in yet. I was off work today. Actually, I'm off all week, start a new job next week, which is probably for the best after this weekend. And I genuinely can't believe it. I went to the shop to get the local paper. That had all sold out, both Press and Journal and Evening Express. I think there was about 5 papers left on the stand. So actually what I did was went to the Daily Record, pulled out the 16-page pullout that had the Free Dons poster, stuck up my t-shirt and walked out. So I wasn't paying for the Daily Ranger instead. But honestly, what a day Saturday was. Why don't you take us through kind of a fast summary of your day before we go into the day itself in a little bit more detail?
Oh, well, I mean, we were in the lucky position of being, a central belt sellout. That our bus didn't leave until just before 10 o'clock, which was quite nice. None of this early morning malarkey. But yeah, it was a bouncing bus on the way over, filled with optimism, filled with booze. Um, and we had a good pre-matcher as well, just sort of about a 15-20 minute walk from Hampden. A few different supporters clubs in there. Again, just started to feel like it was building, and yeah, it was just, we were speaking about in our Four Threads chat today. It's going to be a very, very hard day and a hard trip to ever come close to topping. Just everything about it was just superb.
I think for both of us, obviously being the first Scottish Cup win in our lifetime, the first Scottish Cup win for a generation, it's gonna hit hard. I mean, the amount of kids, obviously, I was lucky enough to take Rory to the game as well, and the emotion of seeing him, I think it's the most I've seen him celebrate a goal and not be frightened by it. It really kind of hit hard, and seeing the excitement in kids' faces on the drive back up the road and yesterday at the street parade as well. It was just absolutely incredible. And the other thing as well, seeing the sea of red not only in the stands, that was cool as fuck, by the way. Big credit to Ultras Aberdeen for putting that all in red, a Hampden campaign, because that aesthetically on the TV looked really impressive. But it gave me a real sense of pride walking towards that stadium, seeing everybody else in the same colour.
It's something I think, I think going forward, I know that it was meant to be this sort of one-off thing to try and G the lads on for a cup final win, but like you say, it just looked amazing. Obviously, we're probably not going to have 20,000 in Pittodrie each week, and it's a bit different with it being, the sort of 4 sides of the stadium. It isn't exactly as sort of unified as a curved end at a national stadium, but like you say, it just looked so sick. All the photos you see between the flags and the wall, the red wall, just looked amazing.
It really did. And, the game itself, look, I know last week I hyped up the game a lot on the Twitter page and knew that it could come back to bite us in the arse if we fell flat on our face. I don't know about you, Phil, but certainly in Aberdeen, the businesses had a lot of people wearing red. I don't know if you continued wearing red throughout the week, but I was high as a kite on Friday, not just because I was leaving the job I was in, but more so for the fact that I think the game was a welcome distraction. But I genuinely had that belief we were going to do it, and it was the hope that was kind of really scared that it was going to come and bite us back in the arse. But it wouldn't be Aberdeen if we didn't do it the hard way. 35 years, 120 minutes, 4 perfect penalties, 2 Dimitar Mitov saves, and Graham Shinney lifts that trophy aloft. Unbelievable.
Brilliant. I mean, like you say, from Friday, even from before Friday, but Friday onwards, it was just I couldn't sleep. It was like a kid on Christmas. I think that's the first sort of time I've ever really had that going into a final, maybe apart from 2014. It was just everything about it. I mean, and then going into Hampden with the display, just everything just added, to that sense of excitement. But like you say, I mean, yeah, typical. We do it the hard way, but even doing it the hard way, I have to say, every man to a T just played an absolute blinder. I did see that Can't Be Bothered did put a comment in about Ockles not getting on, but honestly, if he followed the trend of every other player that started and came off that bench, I think he would have played out of his skin as well. It was just honestly everything just fell perfectly for us.
Yeah, and as Adam Heddle said as well, the roller coaster of the season ending on the ultimate high. Everybody at Aberdeen are legends. Great weekend. And that was the opportunity. Again, my final tweet before the game from the podcast account was it was time to be heroes. And that's what ultimately everybody associated with this club has achieved this weekend. They are heroes and they will be remembered. Those of us like myself that were at the music hall on Thursday night for the 1990s Legends reunion. I think it was Blair Bruce on my Instagram that put up a post said, look forward to being back in 35 years for the 2025. And he'd done that on Thursday night. And I messaged him and said, well, I'm very much looking forward to it. Hopefully we can make it, 5-10 years. I can actually do it a lot quicker to hear the stories from that cup run. Just even the stories from inside the dressing room and the build-up. I know there was the talk from Graham Shinnie and Dante Polvara revealing what Sir Alex Ferguson had said to the team in the build-up as well. So, yeah, I think, with the year of the underdog, we went 1-0 down. I thought, of course, it's going to be us that, doesn't live up to that underdog hype and we fall flat on our face. But no. We don't do that. We follow the script and lift the cup. And I was listening back to kind of what we were discussing on the preview show to kind of see how many things that we said we got spot on. One thing we didn't get spot on was team lineup and formation. What did you feel walking to the ground or sitting in the pub beforehand, seeing that Jimmy Tillene had gone for 5 at the back?
And do you know what? I didn't mind it one bit. I know I said in the preview I couldn't see him changing the shape, and it may be a bit of a risk, to change the shape for the first time in the season, and arguably, well, not really arguably, the biggest game of our season, really. But when the lineup came out again, I don't know if it is the sort of beer goggles and the blind optimism that we all had. It just you kind of looked at that team and you thought, yeah, you know what, that probably is the best team that we could put out here. I know that some eyebrows were maybe raised about Devlin coming in and maybe Jack Milne getting a start as well in such a high profile match. But again, I think it was, it was the right thing to do. I mean, how often have we gone out and tried to play our type of football and play our shape against Celtic and get absolutely turned over? So, I think the fact that Jimmy has shown that he's learned and he did change things up was brilliant. And like I say, I mean, I know it wasn't the prettiest game at times from an Aberdeen perspective, but nobody's arsed about that now.
But I said it on, Thursday, Friday. I think I said it in our group chat actually after the Europa League final that, if we played like Spurs at the weekend and won the cup, nobody gives a shit. At the end of the day, our name's on the trophy now. We've all got that memory, that moment that is going to stay with us for a lifetime. It doesn't matter. And I actually heard your comment from Ewan that had said, he envisaged the game going to penalties and we could probably win the game with about 8% possession. It was 19% possession, but that was a real Jimmy masterclass. As West Coast Don says, Aberdeen played their game plan to perfection. It might not be the prettiest on the eye, but in the biggest game of the season, Jimmy probably took the biggest risk in playing 5 at the back for the first time during his time at Aberdeen. And go big or go home. No risk, no reward. And ultimately, we've ended up with the biggest reward, and that is the Scottish Cup returning to Pittodrie for the first time in 35 years. You mentioned Jack Milne, maybe the surprise around that. Can't be bothered saying he can't be the only one that hopes he's given game time next season. It's hard to disagree with that. I think Jack really has played his way into serious contention, but does it also potentially open up the option to play a back 5 next season? A lot has been made that Jimmy hasn't had a plan B this season. I don't know where he pulled that plan B from to start it this weekend, but it worked.
Yeah, I mean, like you say, tactically, it was just played to an absolute blinder. I mean, really, Celtic didn't have that many clear-cut chances. They were really limited in the opportunities that they had. But like you say, Jack Milne for me, I think it was maybe Canustra in the end that got the man of the match. But I mean, um, Jack Milne, I think, must have been cutting it close because he was just an absolute colossus at the back. Genuinely superb, and like Campbell Willard said, hopefully see a bit more of him next season. But definitely opens up the idea of a back five, even in games where we are maybe going to be on the ball a bit more, a back three perhaps.
Hmm.
Um, it really does give us that versatility, and we'll obviously come to speak to it later. But when the changes were made, we
Yeah.
still stuck with that shape, and we adapted to it. Povara even slotting in there looked phenomenal. As sort of getting his foot on the ball and getting us going forward. But yeah, definitely played a blinder there. Bit of 4D chess from Jimmy.
Nay half. And I mean, what a time to pull out your ultimate chess move in a game against a manager who's never lost in the Scottish Cup, against a player who's never lost a cup final in Callum McGregor. And honestly, a pint of his tears, please. But as John Kelo says, how easy would that pre-match team talk have been? Given Celtic already setting up the stage for their treble party. There was, I think, a couple of journalists had put up the headline about Lambs to slaughter. I think Dave Cormack said that was pinned inside the dressing room at Cormack Park. John Kelo as well, saying that he's been to every final, or every final he's been to as an Aberdeen fan, he's seen the trophy lifted. So take that, Callum McGregor. I think the other thing you said in our group chat on either Friday night or Saturday morning, which came to fruition, that Jamie McGrath had picked up an injury in training, obviously missed out on the matchday squad completely, and was in line to start the game. I wonder if he was in line to start the game in the number 10, because maybe a bit of a surprise to see Toby Keskin in that role.
Yeah, I mean, Keskin's role for me, I mean, again, he played it a blinder. I'm not surprised he had to be subbed on about the hour mark because the amount of running and pressing that man did was insane. Um, but I mean, whether he was in the 10 or playing as a second striker at times, it was hard to tell. But yeah, you'd almost think that he was coming in there. I mean, the flat three of sort of Clarkson, Palaversa, and Shinnie, I'm not sure whether he would have slotted in there to the same sort of effect. Um, but yeah, perhaps a blessing in disguise that he's picked up that injury, because I'm almost like, if anything was different about that team, I'm not sure we would have done it.
No, and well, Kaiser saying, obviously from the last show when we were doing our teams, he said that we needed to play three centre halves, put Shinnie back in midfield for a bit of bite. Well done to himself on that. Those that were in attendance at the music hall on Thursday night will have recalled Charlie Nicholas being asked by Ali Beg, what do Aberdeen need to do to win the game? And Charlie Nicholas said, unpopular or not, he said the one thing we need to do is not play Graham Shinnie at fucking left back. Put him in midfield. Put him on Callum McGregor. And I do think putting Graham Shinnie into midfield, yes, was effective this weekend, but I also think the back five was extremely effective in nullifying Dyson Maeda in particular. I don't really remember having a chance up until the 96th minute. But Nicholas Kuhn did have some success, but his delivery left a lot to be desired. So I think, as we highlighted that comment from West Coast Don earlier, the game plan worked to a T. And I think Jimmy said keep us in the game until 70 minutes. Yes, we were 1-0 down going in at halftime. Typical. It was a set piece goal, but it was a shite goal to concede. It was a deflection off of Alfie Dorrington. The header was going wide. I heard a few people in the ground question whether Mitov could have done better. I don't think so. It was just one of those, is that going to be the goal that loses us the game? But the response from both the fans and players was superb.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was a weird one because it looked to me as if we went man to man for a change as well, and still conceded. So maybe it's not the tactics; it's maybe just for shite in the air for the most part. But
Yeah.
yeah, even conceding that goal, it was such a muted reaction from the Celtic players. It was such a muted reaction from the Celtic end. Um, and I don't know if it was part of that kind of just made me feel like it really was nothing to worry about. Like I say, I think the shape had done really well in the way we were set out. to press Celtic and really nullifying their chances. And like you say, it was a scrappy goal to concede, but really it was the best opportunity that they'd had.
Mhm.
So there really wasn't anything of too much concern. And I think that the crowd unifying and rallying behind the team, um, we always kind of felt like there was going to be a chance that would crop up at some point.
Yeah, and as Graham Gibb pointed out, the defending in general at corners, bar the goal, was miles better. I also think the balls into the box we dealt with, we got bodies in front of the shots that we resulted Celtic to having from distance. But also Graham also highlights the work rate that both Keskin and Clarkson Nisbet did, sacrificing their normal games and worked their hearts out. Fantastic. I saw a few people maybe not thinking Leighton Clarkson had his best game, but I thought he was fantastic for the exact reasons that Graham highlights there. I thought his closing down of the ball when Celtic were in possession was superb. Nisbet does excellently. We all highlighted his defensive work previously. And yeah, I agree with you. No surprise that Topi needed sub 20 did, because again, his work rate off the ball was superb and he did his job in supporting Kevin Nisbet when we tried to get the ball up or play off that shoulder to be that out ball in the first half. I remember the mazy run that Alfie Dorrington went on in that first half, and I thought, Jesus, this is going to be one of the most iconic Scottish Cup goals if it results in the ball finding the back of the net. But yeah, he did his job. Every man in red did their job. Jimmy Talleen and his coaching staff did their job. They worked out a game plan to beat Celtic. Celtic fans are going to argue we didn't beat them because the game was won on penalties. But as I said at the weekend, our name's on the trophy, so we beat them.
Hey, it was like everyone was saying on Twitter, the biggest crime Aberdeen, had was the fact that they actually, tried to tactically play against Celtic. Heaven forbid we don't just go and, let them have the run of the game and put 4 or 5 past us. You can't win with them. It's either it's too easy or you should let us win. It's quite laughable, really, as was the mass exodus come the final penalty. But yeah, like you say, every single player just to a T, I think played the exact way that everyone needed them to. I think everybody bought in to obviously what Jimmy was putting out in training in the build up to the
Mhm.
game. And like I say, even the subs, I mean, to come in to the game, particularly, at 1-1 later down the line, to come in and really take the game to them and show no fear and again run themselves into the ground. I think Jimmy was saying in his post match interview that players were going down with cramp, but they still just kept on going. And I think it was that fighting belief that everybody just wanted to see, and it's obviously paid dividends.
Yeah, I know some people will say, why haven't we had this belief in previous games against Celtic or the last time we faced them at Hampden as well? But it was really interesting to hear, as you say, that the comments not only from Jimmy but the players, that there was that genuine belief, and whether that was the motivation from the negative press, Derek Ferguson on open goal, his absolutely outlandish comments that why aren't they going for the over 5.5 goals, and everybody wrote us off up unless you were an Aberdeen fan podcast. Even on Friday afternoon, I jumped on BBC Scotland Drive Time with Paul John Dykes from Celtic State of Mind. And to be fair to Paul John, he is more diplomatic in his view in the public domain than he is on his own podcast. But, the questions from the presenters was, are we going down in hope rather than expectation? Why shouldn't we have had that belief? The players had it, fans had every right to have it. And that belief came to fruition. I'm just so delighted for everyone that was there that got to witness it, because honestly that moment's going to stay with me forever. It's just those scenes at the goals and full-time celebrations just makes all the highs and lows absolutely worth it.
Yeah, I think everyone has kind of already said it in their own way, but the time, the money, the effort, the high points, the low points, everything just felt so worth it. Not even just in that moment, like I say, 3 days, basically 3 days later, and I'm still absolutely buzzing off my tits at the moment.
I
It's
can't stop
unbelievable.
refreshing social media, like.
No, exactly, and I mean, as well, I think, we're speaking about belief and the only people having belief being those of an Aberdeen persuasion. I thought Meatov's comments as well about Jimmy saying it's not if, it's when, and I think that's a big thing as well. The players at no point thought they were losing that game or they were out of that game. And I think that was, for me, something that I think we've really got to hold on to. How many times we said this season we concede that goal, especially if it's a scrappy goal, and immediately it just feels like the floodgates could open at any point, and it just never quite happened. Nicky Devlin as well, a player that I've thrown under a lot of criticism this season, immediately showing his experience, telling everybody to calm down, and might I say, played an absolute stormer at left wing back. I'm not sure if it's a 5 at the back he needs to come alive, but what a performance from him as well.
Yeah, it was just unbelievable, that performance. I know the leader of the Nicky Devlin fan club, Neve, will be absolutely delighted with your praise after your previous slander towards him. But you can't fault any of the players this weekend. Nicky Devlin coming in at left back, Jack Milne coming in for his first start at centre back in a cup final, local lad, knows what it means to his family, let alone the rest of the support and the club. As you said, certainly up there for man of the match. I actually spoke to the Aberdeen fan yesterday that presented the man of the match award and asked who got to pick it. Not that I thought Mats Knusters was the incorrect choice, but I wondered how close it must have been between, Jack and even Dimitar Mitov. And he actually said he believed it was actually somebody from Scottish Gas that picked the man of the match, because for him, it would have been between Jack and Dimitar Mitov. But see, that first half, a lot of people will maybe think we were a bit negative in our setup. We didn't really create too many opportunities. What was your view? Did you think we were just playing the game plan in kind of what we discussed a little bit, frustrate Celtic?
I think so. I don't think it was necessarily, well, I suppose it depends on how you look at it. As a neutral, it probably comes across as rather negative, as has been the comments on social media. I think as a Dons fan, as soon as we saw that lineup, we kind of knew how the game was going to pan out, and we were going to be without the ball for massive swathes of that game. I will say the second half was a bit more enjoyable to watch than the first. I think the subs did change the game a little bit and help it open up. But no, I don't think the first half was necessarily negative. Like you say, I think Jimmy knew exactly how he wanted to play, and I don't think the goal was going to change that. I don't want to say he was almost expecting a goal, but I don't think anything was going to change regardless of what happened.
Yeah, and I think the goal didn't change anything. It maybe changed how I felt a little bit, to think, we're going to have to do this the hard way. But I don't know if it was Graham Shinney or one of the centre backs. As soon as the goal went in, it was the arms, like, get the head up, let's keep going. There wasn't, as we've seen in previous encounters against Celtic, that the heads dropped. That didn't happen this weekend, and the belief remained within the group and on in the terraces as well. So that was really encouraging to see. And I think, going in 1-0 down, and as you say, the manner of the goal wasn't worst case scenario, because our game plan was working. And as I said in the preview show, anything can happen in cup football. You just need one chance, one cross, one mistake, one moment of brilliance. We got the first three. But even in the second half, I said to Keith at half time, this game either goes to extra time or we concede quickly after half time and we lose 3 or 4-0. There was no in between for me for that second half. I don't think I was disappointed necessarily with the way we came out in the second half, because again, I think it played into how Jimmy Tilleen was approaching the game. He said after the game, the plan was to be in the game with 20 minutes to go. And we absolutely did that. The first change was the introduction of Pape. What was your thoughts when you saw him coming on? Because there were certainly people around me that would have been happy to see him remain on the bench. But look, we have been one of the first few people to criticise him openly in a public forum, not just our social platforms, but obviously being on the podcast. Before I even get your answer, What a performance, Pape. The role he played in the goal, the outball he provided, the presence he provided at set pieces as well, which Celtic couldn't live with. Outstanding.
Yeah, honestly, I mean, he was just everything that you wanted him to be. You know, we've spoke about a lot this season about the enigmatic nature of him. You're either getting a Ballon d'Or winner or somebody who should hardly even be lacing up at Inverdy pitches. You know, you never normally get an in between. And I'm not sure if it was maybe, you know, there was a slight jeer from the Celtic end when he was coming on. They were maybe thinking,
Mm-hmm.
oh, you know, thankfully, you know, it's Keskinen going off and Pape coming on. But like you say, what a performance. I mean, even aside from that beautiful roulette that just, I think it was Callum McGregor that took out the game in the middle of the park before spraying it out to Palaversa
Mm-hmm.
and obviously leading up to the goal. But I think it was the right change at the right moment. You know, with Keskinen, he was doing fabulous off the ball. But I think the problem was we had no out ball. You know, so often when we were getting the ball, it was we were going to have to go long, and we just had nobody that was the target there. And bringing on someone like Pape in that moment, he was phenomenal at giving us exactly that out ball. And you know, and it just got better and better as the subs kept on rolling on, and those legs kept on getting fresher, and it kept on just getting that slight bit more positive. And he just came into the game a lot more. And yeah, delighted for him to, you know, kind of shut us up from our our past few weeks of saying his touch is shite and his passing shite, because they were perfect on Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, there were still a couple of instances where it certainly, I think, you know, with the game being in the balance at 1-1, where there was some frustration at, you know, maybe not putting a foot in or giving up in inverted commas too easily in the closing down. But as Paul Hurd said, you know, he helped massively get us up the pitch. He was that outball. He was that target man for Dimitar Mitov to launch the ball to, flick the header on. But also his unpredictability. You know, I don't think he knows what his feet are going to do half the time, which makes defending him near on impossible. And that did cause that Celtic defence even more problems. One thing, again, we spoke about on the preview show was whether or not Shayden Morris starts the game or not. Thinking back to the semi-final, I know there was a lot of people on here saying he should start, shouldn't start. And I think we certainly, you and Callum spoke about utilising him as an impact sub. That's something Shayden maybe doesn't like having as a tag, but Jesus, he's going to find that very hard to shrug, because 3 minutes, 3 seconds after being brought onto the pitch, it was his cross that was flapped at by Kasper Schmeichel, in off of his elbow into the back of the net, and absolute pandemonium. And as Gordon McKechnie says, is that the biggest redemption in football history now complete? 15 months ago, he was getting hooked against Motherwell in Warnock's first game to now being a cup final hero.
Honestly, I mean, I think impact sub is, you know, like you say, maybe something he doesn't want sort of labelled with. I think someone's maybe said, I think was it maybe John Kilo, I think. I forgot to sort of flag the comment, but where he'd sort of mentioned that Shady's defensive work, you know, would have maybe not been as effective should he be starting, you know, compared to like Satope
Mm-hmm.
and Clarkson, etc. And I think, you know, when we were chasing that game a little bit, we needed more positive performance. He was the right man to bring on, and I've got to give credits to Joe Anderson as well. When we were on the bus over from Edinburgh, he was speaking about how Morris needs to drill the ball in more. You know, these floated balls are great and all, but against Celtic, they're going to be swept up far too easily. And by God, was he right? Because I have no idea still to this moment what Kasper Schmeichel was trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I know we'd spoken about it in our group chat earlier about his shoulder injury that he had
Yeah,
previous.
well, I've noticed a few people have spoken about that in the comments, because we weren't sure where that's come from. But either that's a brilliant WhatsApp rumor, but I flagged it when Robert commented on it earlier, to take a moment and applaud Jimmy and his coaching team picking up that Schmeichel was nursing a shoulder injury, particularly I think it was his right shoulder, which is the one, his right arm, that the ball deflects in. So I don't think he was particularly comfortable diving to that way. It did look a really awkward way to whatever he was trying to do. I really don't know. And obviously that highlighted why all our penalties were put that way.
Yeah, I mean, I know that it was a shoulder injury that had kept him out throughout April, and why Celtic had used, I think it was Sinisalo or whoever their backup keeper is,
Mhm.
for majority of the last month. But yeah, it was a strange one. It looked like he almost tried to punch it from the deck. I mean, I'm not complaining. For about a solid 12 hours, I thought Nicky Devlin had poked it in at the back stick until I'd watched it back. So I didn't even realise that he'd made that howler at the time. But yeah,
Mhm.
the scenes and the pandemonium. And I mean, at that point, it did feel like a real turning point. I'm not sure about you, but from that point onwards, it just really felt like basically the shoe was on the other foot. Celtic had done on us. For the most part, it just seemed like the heads had totally dropped and
Mhm.
um, they were just totally rocked off their game. So again, credit for the changes because I feel like every change came at the exact right time when it was needed.
Yeah, I can't remember who it was that originally came off. Palaversa had come off for, was it Dante? And then it was actually supposed to be Dorrington. There was that mix up, but thankfully we made the right change in the end. I think Dorrington was struggling a little bit with cramp, but yeah, every change worked. And Ross Medine said, "Does everyone not know he'd injured his shoulder?" To be honest, I knew he was out. I didn't pay that much attention to know it was his shoulder, let alone which shoulder it was. But of course, Ross also went on to highlight the fact that for those of us that had been clinging on to omens, whether it was your receipt on the drive down being £19.90 to the fact that that equaliser came in the 83rd minute, was that just another sign for the Dons lifting the cup? And I don't know about you, Phil, but as soon as that goal went in, you're spot on in terms of the way that the Celtic players, well, didn't really react, or maybe reacted into a manner that we're used to with our players. But I certainly believed as soon as the ball hit the back of the net. I mean, the way Nicky Devlin celebrated, the rest of the players running down towards the section where the ultras was, the mini pitch invasion that delayed the restart of the game, which possibly affected Celtic a little bit more. Maybe allowed our own players to regroup and get a little bit more composure and calm that adrenaline rush. But yeah, I certainly believed we were going to go on and do it.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, I mean, as it got closer to penalties, I mean, the panic did set in. Obviously, like you say, I think Daiza Maeda's chance late on, I couldn't even look at. Like we were saying, it had shades of Tom Rogic in 2017. Schlupp thundering an absolute worldie off the bar as well.
Yeah.
The
Engels hit the post as well.
Yeah, they did have their chances, but like I say, I think we we were so good in just limiting the chances they were able to have. That made on a side, everything felt like it was coming from range or it was really forced at times. Um, just an absolute blinder. And I mean, we had chances of our own as well.
Mhm.
Jack Milne, um, maybe luckily, offside to save me absolutely making an arse of myself and flying 10 rows down for no reason. Polvara with some ping on his left foot in extra time as well. Pape maybe should have done better with his chance.
I think he should.
Um, but it wasn't like we had that one goal and that was us back into shutting up the shop. We were still able to get ourselves forward and try and actually win it prior to the penalties.
Yeah, and as I said to you and Callum earlier, thank God we were practicing penalties, not practicing volleys. Although, had we been practicing volleys, yes, okay, Jack Milne and Matt Knussers were both offside, well offside. But I don't know if I'm glad that Jack missed that opportunity rather than having that ruled out from VAR for offside, because
It'd be so hard to compose yourself after that.
but equally, had that been onside and resulted in a goal, I genuinely think I'd have died. That would have been incredible. It would have been the longest 90 seconds to play out the rest of the game. It'd have been incredible. I just want to come back to the changes because I think John Keelan makes a really interesting point. So he's been watching some of the Celtic podcasts and kind of hearing some of the comments from Celtic fans around the changes Brendan Rodgers made as the game got towards that 90 minutes. They'd already taken off Adam Ida, Nicholas Kuhn, and Yang wasn't really having an impact when he came on. Luke McCowan, I didn't actually even realize he was on until the penalties. Um, the changes that we made had a much bigger impact. Do you think, much like probably Celtic in advance of the game, in terms of them building that treble stage, which was absolutely hilarious to watch being dismantled as we drove past Parkhead on our way out of Glasgow, thought the game was done and dusted when they were making those changes around the hour mark?
Yeah, I mean, perhaps. I mean, I know that someone had put in as well about Schlupp potentially coming on to, try and nullify Pape a little bit.
Hmm.
It felt like their changes really, I think John summed it up perfectly. They were more negative. They were potentially not damage limitation because obviously they weren't losing, but it was sort of that sort of try and control the game a little bit more. Um,
Mhm.
they maybe thought with our shape and the fact that we were quite happy to sit off the ball that we weren't going to create anything.
Mhm.
Perhaps it's because they were so comfortable in the first half when they got the ball out of their defence. And again, that's maybe something Jimmy was really looking for was just almost throw them off a little bit. Um, and really sort of spark a lot of energy into the game late on. So I do think there is an element of them maybe being overconfident as ever.
Yeah, but you also know with Celtic, one pass, one mistake is easily capitalised on. And how much did you think not 2017 all over again when Dyson Maeda was running through?
Oh, I mean, like I said, I mean, I had to turn away. I couldn't stomach to even watch what was about to happen. Um, and the collective cheer just honestly, it felt like we'd scored a winning goal at that point. Meatov just absolutely outstanding. I mean, I actually went and looked it up this morning. He's only 6'3". I mean, between that save and the penalties, the size that that man can make up, I honestly thought he was about 6'7".
Mhm.
Um, he just seems to be able to get his legs, get his hands to any corner of the goal. But yeah, an unbelievable stop at that point in the game as well to come out so confidently and close that angle and make yourself as big as possible. Maida probably should do a lot better than what he does. I mean, for a man that's got what 34 goals or something all season or 34 goal contributions, you would think that,
Yeah.
with the form he's in, he should slot that home. But what a massive save.
It's not the first time though he's missed a big opportunity. There was that one-on-one opportunity he had at Ibrox in the last Old Firm derby where he fluffed his lines that in that one-on-one. I don't know if that was maybe playing in the back of his mind as well, but I don't think we can take anything away from the save from Dimitar Mitov. But as Ross Medine says, after that, it was when he felt an overwhelming belief that we would do it. I'm not sure if I quite believed at that point that we were really going to do it. I certainly believed that that was going to take us to extra time, and who knows what could happen. How torturous was that extra time period for you?
Do you know what? It wasn't actually too bad. I think because we were so good at limiting Celtic's opportunities, I think if we were under the cosh, then it would have been a bit of a worry. But I don't know, just the closer it got to penalties, the more it kind of felt like it was our year. I mean, kind of touched on it on the last show. I think that Meatov is a very good shot stopper, and especially from the penalty spot. If it was Roosing goals like the other year, maybe not so much.
It just shows the
Um,
difference, doesn't it?
exactly. I think, the players can take confidence knowing that Meatov is going to save at least one. I
Mm,
think he was always going to save at least one. So as long as they can do their bit right, there's going to be a good chance.
yeah,
And like I'd mentioned, really the only penalty they could have judged was McGrath's weak attempt um, against was it Rangers Hearts?
yeah,
Can't
Rangers.
even remember now. Um, so really, again, that element of surprise from the team lineup to the tactics to everything up to the penalty takers, I think was just all in our favour. Albeit a bit concerned when it was at the Celtic end. I would have really enjoyed it to be up our end, but again, made it all the sweeter to have the likes of Palaversa and Ode Dabag and co noising up that Celtic end.
Lovely tribute from the Green Brigade to lower their Palestine flag when Obday went up to take the penalty. So the guy sitting next to us said, if the penalties were taken at our end, that would have been the same end as 1990. So he said, if it's at our end, we're winning. In extra time, West Coast Don mentioned about our belief growing because we stayed in the game. Do you think, actually taking the game to extra time, it was ourselves that went in with a little bit more belief potentially than Celtic.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I think there's a lot,
The
they could take
pressure
a
was
lot.
on them, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people had maybe said sort of that free hit, that zero expectation that Aberdeen had, and I think as heartbreaking as it would have been to concede an extra time, I think even if we had lost that game, I don't think anyone, the players would know that they'd given their all. And I think that's, the baseline of what everyone was asking for. So I think, there probably was that sense of belief where they'd done all they could, and, really all they had to do was just keep going.
Mm-hmm.
And the longer that goes on and the longer that you're still in that game, the tide is going to turn at some point.
Yeah. I like how Joe's outing you for your emotions through extra time, saying that you were just about greeting the whole way through.
I was on
And
the verge of tears for majority of it.
yeah, well, I don't know about you, but the penalties was probably where the emotions were tough to keep in check. I was standing behind Ben Phillip from the BBC, and I think him and the guys next to him, some of the penalties we almost couldn't watch. The longer it got on, but when I really started to believe was when Callum McGregor missed that first penalty. I don't know what it was about the fact that Callum McGregor couldn't happen to a nicer person missing. I suddenly thought, I don't see us losing this. I really didn't. What was your emotions during that penalty shootout?
Oh, they were all over the place. I was standing with Joe, Matthew, and Ethan, and a bunch of the Four Threads guys. And yeah, Joe's not wrong. I mean, I'm not a religious person. I threw up a prayer. I've gone to Hampden so many times.
Mhm.
And those who've maybe followed me on my socials or whatnot. Um, I've got a tattoo of my dad on this arm. I've gone to Hampden through all the shit times with him. I've got my season ticket with him in the South Stand. He's gone through some health issues and hasn't been able to go for the best part of a few months. I'm almost on the verge of tears again. I just
Set me up
spent,
if you start.
honestly, I just spent the whole penalty shootout, just my lips up against this tattoo and just hoping they would do it for him. Oh Jesus, I'm gonna get set off again, Glenn. Yeah, honestly, as soon as that was saved, and I think the fact we went toe for toe with Shinnie as well, him stepping up for that first penalty and whacking it in top bins.
Mm.
Honestly, it just, like I say, just on the verge that whole time until that last penalty was saved. It was just, the belief was just massive.
Yeah, I can hear your voice going
Oh,
a little bit as well. I mean, even for me watching that with Rory as well, the guy, as I said, the guy next to us during that penalty shootout was fantastic with Rory, as was Ben as well, high fiving Rory after every penalty, and the guy next to us giving Rory a fist pump. But to see him openly booing the Celtic players, or doing the L for a loser sign every time that they were walking up, and then his reaction to the penalties was, yeah, unbelievable to be able to share that moment. And I have to give a shout out before I forget to Will George. I didn't know who he was at the time. He said I wouldn't know who he was, but after the shootout, came over and asked if I wanted a photo of me and Rory, and it's an unbelievable photo he's managed to capture. Yeah, and in that moment, that is such a fantastic memory to be able to have. But I just wonder as well, from the player's point of view, when both your captains go up to take the first penalties, the Celtic captain misses, Graham Shinnie making no mistake sending Kasper Schmeichel the wrong way, what confidence that gives to the next four or more penalty takers.
oh, absolutely. I mean, I don't know if that was the plan for Shinnie to always step up first, or if it was just on the back of McGregor missing. I mean, I know that Shinnie has taken penalties for us before, and he is a pretty solid penalty taker. But it did, like you say, kind of almost feel like the mental game of, right, they've missed, we'll stick our skipper up, and he puts it in, and the boost again, not only does it give the penalty takers, I mean, Meatov as well, because you're immediately going,
Mm-hmm.
and you know what he's like as a player. He is a very confident player, and he would have been determined to be the hero. He knows, right, if I save another one, it's me in the papers. And keepers don't often get the chance to do that, so you're going to cling on to it whenever you can. But yeah, what a bloody set of penalties, by the way.
I mean,
Unbelievable.
I don't think you're going to see a better 4 penalties. The keeper is going to get absolutely nowhere near. And how many times have you rewatched that penalty shootout, or maybe even just the last penalty save?
So many. So many. I mean, even when we were, like I say, I mean, I went back to watch it for what felt like the 50th time today when we were speaking about, the potential scouting of Schmeichel's injury. When I
Yeah,
went, did we actually send all of them to his right hand side? I went, oh, we did. And they're
yeah,
still bloody tidy penalties as well. Who would have thought
yeah,
it? I think the only one that went bottom corner was maybe Dante Polvara. I mean,
yeah.
talk about putting them where a keeper can't get them. I mean, Shinne, Palaversa, and Dabag's penalties were phenomenal.
I mean, let's go through the penalty shootout one by one because the longer we can drag speaking about this victory, I'm sure everyone doesn't really care. Second penalties, Johnny Kenny, probably the only decent Celtic penalty, makes it 1-1. You then think, oh, is there going to be any nerves? Dante Polvara. I just want to take a minute first. I think who was it that spoke about the interviews afterwards? Yeah, it was West Coast Dawn who spoke about the players' interviews afterwards. Dante Polvara's interview in particular, I know I posted the whole thing on the Twitter page. So you can find that interview you did with Tyrone Smith on our Twitter page at RTG_podcast or on the BBC Sports Sound podcast, which you can find on Sports Sound, Spotify. If you need any more content to listen to after this episode, I'm sure you're all going to savor as much as possible. But Dante gets it. For a player that's had horrible luck with injuries, a player who's been farmed out on loan, at times had to fight for his place within this team, he understands how much it means to those of us in the stands. It feels like he's one of us, really buying into that. And you could see how much it meant to him not only scoring, but the fact I watched Gogsy's vlog of the game. Dante can't watch any of the penalties.
No,
He's
no.
one of us.
Honestly, and I mean, like you say, he just understands it. And I'm not sure if it's partly due to, of all the lows that he has had in his Aberdeen career. He's had the highs as well. The goal against Frankfurt and his performances in Europe, etc. But between the injuries and getting hooked by Warnock and having that loan spell, and everybody thinking that was going to be the end of his Aberdeen career, I think you can take a lot of vindication from that cup win. The comeback that he's made. We speak about redemption arcs. He's somewhat
Mhm.
had one of his own in recent seasons, and as well to come on and slot into that centre half role, have a chance to win it in extra time, and then to coolly step up and slot that in. And a few people have alluded to that video of him collapsing onto the ground
Oh,
as Mitov saves the final penalty is probably is my favorite video, I think, other than Shady Mo with his cigar and I think Paramount or Soul or whatever he was.
yeah.
That is probably my favorite video to come out of the weekend.
It is. It's, as someone said, pure cinema. Obviously, provided us a thumbnail for the video here on YouTube as well. But as Andy Wright also points out, he really hits his song, doesn't he?
Yeah, well, we'll need to post Callum's one on the Twitter page. Callum's song for Dante, I think, might bring him back in the good books.
I'll get that done because Neve's also really frustrated that the Waka Waka song that I posted on Twitter, I didn't credit her for once she saw everybody singing that out in town as well, including the players. But after Dante Polvara, I think it was Luke McCowan was up next for Celtic. He slots his penalty away. Not the best penalty, I didn't think. Not a lot of power, but Dimitar Mitov goes the wrong way. Our penalties were exceptional, but fuck me, I don't think I'll see a better penalty than Obde Dabag. That was postage stamp. And Paul Hurd asks on the back of that, would we shell out for him in the summer?
See, it's a tough one because emotions are running high, and I'm going to say yeah,
I'm
because
having Kevin Nisbet back as well.
the man's an absolute legend. I thought he came on and did really well as well, to be honest. I think he had a chance. I think he played like a superb dummy or a little back heel flick at one point that sent somebody through on the Celtic defence, which was superb. But like you say, pinpoint penalty. The fact afterwards, the Green Brigade had lowered their Palestine flag. He does his prayer, and then to noise up Dyson Maeda on his way up as well.
Oh, did he? I never even noticed that.
Absolute brilliant shithousery. Just screaming at him was ace, and it almost looked like it played a part. With Maeda's pen almost being saved by Mitov. Another really poor pen from Celtic as well. But yeah, Ode's pen. And like the little noise you can hear on the highlights of it hitting right in the sort of stanchions, just beautiful.
On Maeda's pen though, it was almost so bad it was good. Like
I think it wasn't expected from Mitov. I think Mitov thought it was going to be a lot better than what it was, and it took him by surprise.
Were you surprised to see Mitov not move for it? Not, I know he moves, but he doesn't dive as such.
I think he was going to go the other way, but I think it's not hit hard enough that he has that split second to kind of readjust himself, and I think that's probably why he's not gotten to it.
Yeah,
The fact I
agreed.
think he is probably going one way and he's gone, oh bugger, he's actually hit a shocker there, and he's trying to change direction, but I think it does hit off his gloves, and he
Yeah, it
trundle
does,
in.
yeah.
But
Yeah, he's unlucky, and I actually said to Keith earlier, if he dives for it and dives the wrong way, he probably saves it with his feet, ironically enough. Because yeah, it's an absolute shocking penalty, and at that point you think, oh, are we going to have a little bit of kind of confidence, momentum? Because again, Maeda's kind of fluffed his line on the best chance, again to score, and then looks nervy with the penalty. A question coming from Patrick Ewan in, I guess, relation to our discussion on Obday. If we had to keep one, who are you choosing, Obday, Dabag, or Esther Sokler?
see, it's a tough one because it's sort of like,
They're
with
two
Ode,
different players.
yeah, they're two different players, and with Ode, obviously you're going to have to then go and spend that fee. Sockler's already at the club. Can you try and mold him into a player? But I think West Coast Dons put in the comments there. Ode does seem like a big game player. I mean, how many times? I mean, I think it's two 90th minute winners he's scored for us.
Yeah.
One against Killy, one against Hearts. So he is that kind of player that you kind of feel like if a chance does come at those moments in the game, there's every chance it's hitting the net. So it is an interesting one, but they do fill two different roles. Like you said, I think Sockler's more mobile, maybe not the one you're looking at as a goal scorer, but maybe more of a sort of, to coin an American term, that utility man, that sixth man that's
Mm.
going to come in and offer us maybe something a little bit different. But
Yeah.
yeah, with Europe coming up, if we've got the money to flesh this squad out, I think all the better.
Yeah, as Graham Gibb, at least someone's remaining reasonably level-headed in this moment of time, saying no deals will be done at this moment of high emotion, cold light of day, and then it comes down to price. And I think you could apply that to even Kevin Nisbet returning, because of course he's not even been mentioned in this discussion, obviously not being on the pitch, but in terms of strikers that we could see potentially returning to Pittodrie. As you said, obviously, John Keelo highlighting the need for a bigger squad with 10 games, as does David McLennan as well. My actual answer to that was going to be neither and get Bojan Miovski back on loan, but yes, I'll wait till the cold light of day, to quote Graham. Ante Palaversa up next for the Dons, and I don't know what was better, his penalty or his celebration towards the Green Brigade. After, and again, at that point, for those maybe that still weren't confident, that certainly got to be the moment when I thought, fucking hell, we've got two chances here to win the Scottish Cup.
Yeah,
Wait,
exactly.
we've got two chances. Oh my God, we're going to do it.
Exactly. How often are you in a moment where the pressure is all on Celtic? It felt like it just felt like everything had fallen into place at that point, like you say, and I think the celebration just even more just lifted the crowd. Just again, we come back to it with Dante as well. Just the fact these players seem to get it. None of them are from Aberdeen. I mean, you've got a boy from Palestine, no, he's not Maeda, a boy from bloody New York, who can barely stomach to watch the penalties, and a boy from, I'm pretty sure, Splitter Zagreb, wherever the hell it is he's from in Croatia, giving it the big one, the Green Brigade. None of them are from Maastricht. None of them are from Torre. The only Casey Loon there was Graham Shinney. And, you know,
And
you'd almost feel like they all went there.
and the other local lads sitting on the bench watching the penalties after having played a blinder already.
Yeah, honestly, it's just brilliant to see. And then, you know, the final penalty, Meatov, just another outstanding save. And as well, to be fair, to be able to keep calm and try and limit the celebrations until a VAR check has gone through as well. I mean, I would have been top off, belly slide immediately. So I've got no idea how he's managed that.
At the game, tell me, did you have any idea that Dimitar Mitov was stopping to check for a VAR check, or there even was one?
No, Joe, if he's still watching, will attest in the comments that I just crumpled in a flood of tears heap in the Hampden stands whilst he was tops off and right down at the front of the stand. Same with Matthew. I mean, I've very few times have I cried in the arms of a man, and Matthew was a very nice man to cry in the arms of. I was just an absolute wreck the minute I saw that ball bounce off his hands. If they'd VR checked that, I still would have been confident that he would have saved it again. What a man. His pearly whites are beautiful, and his penalty saving technique's even better.
Yeah, he's got a tan and a set of teeth that Dave Cormack is extremely jealous of, I'm sure. But like you, as soon as that ball parried off his hands back out towards Alistair Johnson, again, couldn't happen to a more unlikable Celtic player. There's just something about his arrogance, strutting around that pitch that I can't warm to. Delighted to see him be the one that missed, and obviously Dimitar saving that to win us the cup. But very much like you, hugging the guy next to us, hugging Ben below. There was another guy who was sat behind us, said he was just there on his own. So those of us around him were his family for the day because he couldn't be with his own family. You know, I had apps until I, sat at home. I think it was 11:45. By the time I got to the penalty shootout, realised that Dimitar had the composure about himself to check that was, and tell the players to wait who were already absolutely flooding onto the pitch. Not in as much tears as you were, I'm sure, but that set off some unbelievable celebrations that are going to live long in the memory for those lucky enough to be at the game.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I keep on saying it. I mean, we spoke about in our sort of Four Threads group chat. It's a day that is really, really going to be hard to top. I mean, you know, like you said, second Scottish Cup final of our sort of conscious lifetime.
Yeah.
It's really going to be hard to top that one. And yeah, like I've said, I mean, I was still a wreck the next day when I phoned my dad once my hangover had somewhat subsided. I think I cried again at my bloody dining table when I was on the phone to him. It's just that release of emotions. You know, like you say, it's been the League Cup was nice, but the Scottish Cup's the big one. It is the big one. You know, just the history of it all and the
It
magnitude and
guarantees you that European football, it's got that, as you say, the League Cup's nice, but the Scottish Cup final is the one. It's got that prestige about it.
yeah, exactly. It's massive. It's going to be such a hard one to top that feeling of that first one. You know, and I think for a generation of people, it's probably going to be the best weekend of their life until they either get married or have kids. And even then, it's probably going to be cutting it very, very close.
Yeah, well, I have to say I did very much rate Stewie Walker's tweet about, it being the best day of his life, and he includes the birth of his child. Obviously, as a dad, I can also attest to that because I think his tweet's brilliant in the fact he said, "You're not jumping around the maternity ward with your best pals when your kid's born. You're absolutely not." That was an unbelievable feeling that will really, until probably the day I get married, will be hard to beat. But I've got to find someone to marry first to be able to achieve that. But yeah, just, and then seeing the reactions from the players, Dave Cormack on the pitch as well. That photo of Alan Burrows kissing Dave Cormack on the cheek. Even the outburst from Jimmy Talleen, a manager who's normally emotionless, doesn't show his cards, that really felt like an outburst from him. If it wasn't Saturday, there certainly was yesterday.
Oh, yeah. I mean, to be fair, for him, the release must have been massive. I mean, he's come under a lot of flack, especially in the recent performances. Um, and maybe it was a little bit of a get up, yeah, to a lot of the West Coast
Yeah,
media who've been on his back recently. 1 year in the door, in a trophy that Connor Barron didn't win by leaving to go get trophies. So that'll be a good one for the Daily Ranger to report on. But yeah, again, just lovely to see him and the coaching staff soaking it up. Peter leaving, getting a good chorus of a song over in the corner when he came around with a cup. Even Jimmy, all the coaching staff, Dave, Alan, and I'm just wanting to say, if anyone from the club is listening, Alan did promise me at Player of the Year, we were going to lift the cup on an episode of this podcast. So if you want to remind him of that from that 1 a.m. bar at Player of the Year, please do.
yeah. I've already messaged Claire because Alan did say if we won the cup, he would 100% come on and do an end of season review. So I will follow that message up until Claire goes on maternity leave to make sure that Alan sticks to his word.
But yeah, just brilliant for the club, brilliant for the city, brilliant for the fans, brilliant for the players. Just what a weekend! What a weekend!
Honestly, what a day, what a weekend. You're absolutely right. And the prize money that comes with winning the Scottish Cup, let alone the prize money that is now going to follow for European football. Dave Cormack, setting out his stalls for what that's going to be spent on, some of it going towards that long awaited indoor pitch at Cormack Park, which I had a tour of a few months ago, and kind of see some of the plans they've got earmarked for Cormack Park as part of that development. They want to put a stand in place for the women's team and also for the younger teams, so that they can actually take more of a crowd in there. And Dave also alluding to extending Cormack Park itself to build the girls' academy, which of course my former employees are a part of, in sponsoring and building that and developing the women's side of the game. So that's going to be brilliant in terms of that. But I suppose for the funny side of it, and I don't know if Michael Monan's going to be listening to this episode, because after the last day of the season, he texted me and said, "Good afternoon, Glenn. Taking great pleasure in the fact that Hibs had finished third and were guaranteed European stage football." So, oh boy, did I take great pleasure in texting him on Saturday night saying, "Good evening, Michael," because we've ousted Hibs from guaranteed group stage football and secured it for ourselves and what is set to be at least £6 million, as Colin Gale told us on Saturday night, those saves from Dimitar Mitov would be worth, before you even take into account ticket money.
Yeah, just very, very funny. I think, even outside of Hibs, the whole social media gloating of Dundee United
Oh
on the
my God,
final
that
day of the
admin feed is
season
brilliant.
is just very funny. I was that the first team that's been knocked out of the Europa League without even playing a game in it.
Yeah.
Hilarious. And like I say, I've been going into meetings beaming all day. Obviously living and working down in Edinburgh. I got a nice wide array of all the fans who are completely rattled by our cup win and the fact we've ousted them or pinched money off them, etc. And I've done it all in an 83 away shirt, which has just added insult to injury for them. Yeah, just a very funny outcome for all.
Yeah, and I think as well, to have that awareness to wind up Dundee United in terms of the club's admin, as you said, it's just brilliant. Obviously we saw the scenes at the cup parade yesterday. I know you weren't there. It was great to see the city centre absolutely buzzing, young and old there, bars packed till late in the night again yesterday. Great for the city. I think it just shows what a successful football club does to a city. Heaven forbid the council actually use a bit of common sense and work with the football club to keep the club within the city, because They've been quite happy to promote how great it's been to see fans flock to the city to promote it. And as the joke went on Thursday night as well, they've had long enough to sort Union Street for the next Scottish Cup parade, because that was a bit of a shit show, that route.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I don't think my hangover would have been able to take coming up the road. But a little bit of FOMO for not going. But yeah, I would be very interested to see the hospitality intake from the likes of the Foundry and Justice Mill, who both ran out of tenants. I would like to see see their sales just from Saturday night and Sunday alone. And I think Dante Polvara, maybe slightly scathingly, if anyone saw his Sky interview, saying he didn't realize how much people actually lived in Aberdeen because every time he walks down Union Street, it's dead. So
Yeah.
maybe the council will take notice of that as well. But yeah, absolutely phenomenal. Like you say, and I think it's another case as well. Scott McLennan had made that point on Twitter about don't take the stadium away from the heart. It's a club
Yeah.
for the city, and look what happens when it's successful. It doesn't just impact the club and the people who are going. It has a knock-on effect. Everything down Union Street and George Street and Broad Street, whatever it might be. Everyone benefits from the team doing well and people putting their money into the city.
Yeah. In terms of getting ahead of ourselves a little bit and thinking to Europe briefly, going into the Europa League playoff, knowing winning those two games puts us into that group stage. Defeat will see us into the Conference League. I was asked this question on the Scottish Football, Totally Scottish Football podcast. Would we be better off in the Conference League? And I can see a few of you having this conversation in the comment section just now. With the new league format that is applied to those two competitions, does Conference League potentially suit us better for progression in Europe?
I think so. I mean, as much as right now I feel like we could go up against Real Madrid and scud them 4-0 in the absolute cloud9 state that I'm on. Um, I think realistically, being against worse, well, on paper, worse opposition, um, would suit us a lot better. It was a bit like the other season where Hacken went into that group, I think, likes of Fiorentina, who I think went on to the final that year. We would have probably gotten equally as scudded. I think
Yeah.
the chance to get that little bit of extra prize money from draws and hopefully some wins, in the long run would probably pan out better. Especially this being our, our in this new format, our first proper attempt at getting a good crack at knockout stages.
Yeah. Right. Couple of things then to round up um, this episode. I mean, we could probably keep going for an exceptionally long time. I don't know how long we'll end up keep going for, but I want to come back to the manager. Jimmy Talleen, a manager that was lauded for before his arrival for winning games with low possession, does so in a cup final, spoke a lot, on here about his style, a manager that we've stuck by despite that winless run during the middle of the season, a manager that the club have stated is part of a 3-year project, a project that has been used against him, a manager that has been questioned, certainly as the season petered out. Admittedly, even myself began to have a little bit of doubt in after the manner in which we lost that Dundee United game. But overall, I was certainly happy with the job he's done. He's brought stability to the club. He saw us to a League Cup semi-final. Yes, we stumbled over the line in the league. He took us to a Scottish Cup final and won it. Sum up that first season for Jimmy Talleen. I mean, first season in charge of a 3-year project. He wins silverware. Where does he go from here?
I mean, the only way is up, surely. That
Third
first,
place next season.
a bit like Ange. Ange doesn't win things in his first season, but he always does in the second. Jimmy's won something in the first, so you'd think that Scottish Cup win's going to hopefully act like a springboard, and transcend into some league form, some European form as well. Hopefully, who knows? Back to backs, maybe. Glenn, is it time to start lauding that out now? The champions defend, perhaps.
Yeah,
Um,
we've not even
but
got to
yeah,
the the preseason preview for making our predictions, and you're already throwing that out
Oh,
there.
honestly, again, it's probably the cloud nine state, and I know that the cold light of day will eventually settle, even though I really hope it doesn't, because getting this feeling as an Aberdeen fan has been so few and far between,
Yeah.
for our generation. But yeah, you're hoping, improvements to the squad, um, as we spoke about on the last episode, improvements to Jimmy's ability to adapt, which obviously he showed on Saturday.
Mhm.
Um, and really just to take everything that's happened in this first season and turn it into a learning experience. And like I say, use it to springboard into next year and try and get improvements elsewhere.
Yeah, and a few of you saying, obviously Jimmy, this season without his family being over here in Aberdeen, which I'm sure has been difficult for him as well. So, I think a testament to what he's done, and I'm sure there was a few deleted tweets after that victory at the weekend as well. One thing then, with the European fixtures next season, that's 10 guaranteed. And honestly, I was getting so wound up this evening. I was listening to a Hibs fan and a Rangers fan at Rory's football training. Both said it was the world's worst final. Aberdeen didn't deserve it, and it's good that Aberdeen are in Europe because it'll affect us next season. And honestly, I couldn't be more motivated for next season listening to the shite that they were speaking. Um, with the squad size in particular, Ross Doohan's apparently signed a pre-contract with Celtic. Jack McKenzie set to leave the club for Plymouth Argyle. Tom Ritchie also set to leave. So certainly a goalkeeper looks set to be on the cards in terms of the summer recruitment. But just how big a summer is this set to be for the club, and how much investment do you reckon is needed from Dave Cormack?
Yeah, I mean, every summer's a big summer. We're always bound to lose players that are going to need replaced. Um, and then playing in Europe also adds to the need for improvements and sort of fleshing out the squad a little bit. And I've got no doubts that Dave's going to put that investment in. I think you could tell from some of his interviews following the game, just how much he is going to back Jimmy going into next season. Um, like I said, I think a goalkeeper, a left back. You're looking at strikers as well, obviously, depending on where Nisbet and Ode's futures lie.
Mhm.
Um, but you've also got a lot of exciting things with a lot of the youth players that you're maybe hoping are going to get more of a run. Jack Milne for one. Hopefully get more opportunities like Alfie Bavidge, Alfie Stewart, Adam Emsley, Finlay Marshall, all had really good seasons while still on loan. So I think there is a lot of exciting stuff to come in the next season, on and off the park. Really, as you said, the investment in Cormack Park as well, a real big positive.
And I suppose as well, with certainly those loan young players you mentioned, possibilities, of course, with the homegrown quota that you have to have for Europe as well, that not only they see more minutes domestically, but potentially in Europe as well, more so domestically to aid them on the European stage as well, if needed. But yeah, I think it is an interesting summer. Scottish Crypto wondering if we'll keep Shaden Morris. We'll maybe speak about some of the players in recruitment in our end of season review show that we'll do next week. Probably more as a pre-record rather than a live episode for that one. But yeah, I think it'll be interesting as Lee Seymour points out a lot of the lone lads leaving. You highlighted Kevin Nisbet, Obde Dabag, Alfie Dorrington, of course, going back to Tottenham as well. Kind of kept his future in Tottenham's court. See what they want to do with him next season. Again, you mentioned Ange. It might depend on what his situation is, depending what happens there. So I think as well with winning the Scottish Cup and guaranteeing those 10 games in Europe, not only does it give us a bit more added war chest to Dave's Cormac coins, potentially that Lewis Ferguson sell-on fee coming in hot as well. We could be set to net over £10 million easily before a ball's even kicked in August. And I think as well that obviously that going into the playoff round means we don't actually play a European fixture until the 21st of August. The draw for that playoff round's on the 4th of August for anyone who hasn't looked into it yet. Also allows the players that little extra break for the likes of Toby Keskin. I'm sure he's absolutely delighted about that. So yeah, a huge advantages to that cup win yesterday.
Yeah, massively, massively. And I mean, like I say, I would be really interested to see the number of new season ticket holders, the uptake following the 30th of May,
Hmm.
when the keep your seat deadline is up, because there's nothing like a cup win to ignite, people really throwing their all into the club. And
Yeah.
again, more new season ticket holders, more guaranteed income for the club, all the better. Um, yeah, and I mean, like you say, a full pre-season with the squad under the belt for the likes of Tobers, Knooster, Keskinen, Nielsen, all coming in hopefully fresh and ready to go next season, albeit I think Toby's got the under-21
Yeah, he does.
European Championships to get out the way. So as much as I love him, hopefully an early exit for Finland so he can rest up as much as possible. But yeah, a lot to really, really be excited for next season, and I for one cannot wait and don't quite know what I'll do for the next couple months, even though I'm going to be away for the Europa League playoffs, sadly.
Yeah, and it'll just kind of be interesting to see, as Dave McLennan says as well, no League Cup qualifying. Those group stages, we miss out on them this season as well. Just to
At least
see.
one team in Edinburgh's getting group stage football this season.
Very true. To see kind of what the summer holds. But yeah, I think a real boost to hopefully attract players. We saw last season the attraction that offered to Hearts. It now maybe puts us up above both them and Hibs for potential targets that both clubs are fighting over. Let's round up the episode then, and let's see if we can keep our emotions in check for one final time. Sum up how good and how much Saturday meant to you, Phil.
The best weekend of my life. And like I say, it meant absolutely everything. There's nothing I've wanted more. And particularly after, the sort of start of this year that I've had and this season, it really did feel like more than just football for me. And yeah, forever going to be grateful to Jimmy and all those players that are in that squad, because they're all, in my eyes, I think in everyone's eyes, just absolute legends, the lot of them.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right to highlight Jimmy Tulline, his coaching staff. I'll even go as far as putting thanks on to Dave Cormack, Alan Burrows, let alone all those players that played their part in not only getting us to the final, but playing in that final as well. You had the opportunity to make yourselves heroes. You had the opportunity to write yourself into Aberdeen history. You took that chance, you executed that chance, and you're in history. You've won us the Scottish Cup for the first time in 35 years, and as Phil says, made our weekends, made our days, and gifted us moments and memories that will last a lifetime. I know it's been a hard start to the year for you, Phil, and I know how much it would have meant if your dad had been there with you. Obviously, having to watch at home at the weekend. For me, I hummed and hayed about taking Rory this weekend, and to be able to share that moment and have a moment captured at full time will last with me for a lifetime. And just to be able to see our team win the Scottish Cup when I never thought I would see the day, especially against a Celtic team that's dominated Scottish football. Brendan Rodgers has dominated Scottish football, I think makes this victory so much sweeter.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like you say, I think just what a day, what a team, and what a bloody way to do it. We wouldn't be Aberdeen if we didn't do it the hard way, would it?
It's not fun if we don't do it the hard way, is it?
No, exactly. Like I say, oh, I honestly think I could burst into tears at any moment once again if we keep on going.
Yeah, I think I managed just to hold it in check, and I think maybe before we set a few of you off at home as well, I just want to say as well, thank you to everybody that has supported this channel, whether you've paid a membership to support us, subscribed to the channel, liked any of our videos, including the one tonight. Thank you. Moments like the weekend make doing this show worthwhile. Seeing nearly 130 of you watching this episode as well, listening to two guys trying not to burst into tears. recalling the weekend and just how much it means to us. But it was worth it, wasn't it? We'd do it all again in a heartbeat, wouldn't we, Phil?
Very easily, very easily. And like you say, I mean, even outside of just the sport on the channel, I mean, the amount of people on away days and even on Saturday at Hampden had came up and sort of spoken about the show and big cuddles at
Couldn't wait
full
for this
time when we
episode, could
won.
they?
Exactly, exactly. It's just been through the highs and lows. It's been a brilliant season. Yeah, and it's been brilliant to have everybody on the ride with us and listen to our in-end waffle for the most part. You've made two very emotional men very, very happy,
Yeah.
including Callum in that as well.
Yeah, absolutely, including Callum with that. And no, he's not too emotional to be on the show tonight. But I think to end the show, not only a thank you to those that have supported the show, a thank you to Jimmy Tulleen, the 11 that started, the substitutes that came on the pitch, as I said again, Dave Cormack, Alan Burrows, everybody connected with Aberdeen Football Club. Us as a fan base, Aberdeen Football Club, Scottish Cup champions 2025. Just let that sink in. Until next time, we'll see you then.